Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to talk the submarine latest technological innovation and developments. I hope you all have some questions for the panelists. And talking about the panelists, I'll give them a quick minute to introduce themselves. Then we're going to listen to Luca for a presentation. And hopefully you have a couple of questions for Luca as well. And then we'll move into the panel discussion. So to start, Teresa, if I may ask you to kick off and please do an introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you for having me and Infinera here in the panel.
Certo.
My name is Teresa Monteiro. I am a Director of Solutions Marketing at Infinera. Infinera, I hope some of you know, is a supplier of optical connectivity solutions. And in the submarine domain, in particular, we offer SLTE equipment and transponders capable up to 800 gigabit transmission rates, which are being deployed in subsea networks, the cables we've been talking about since yesterday as we speak. I would also like to add that I'm very glad this event is taking place here in Portugal, because Infinera has a large R&D center. One of the biggest R&D centers of Infinera is based here in Lisbon. So it's a very nice coincidence for me and for us.
And happy to have you. So welcome. Luca, just a quick one.
Yes, thank you, Eric. My name is Luca Lucasini. I'm working in Nokia in the optical network division, taking care of SLT business. And today I'm also representing my colleagues of ASN. So yes, ASN is part of Nokia. They are the division within Nokia that does wet plant. And this is what we're going to talk about today. And we keep the brand, just because ASN is such a huge brand in subsea that we didn't want to change.
Absolutely. Henrik.
So my name is Fredrik Hane, and I'm from the company Eastern Light, based in Stockholm in Sweden. And we are developing a new most subsea fiber optic network in the northern European countries, covering 9 countries with approximately a plan of deploying 4,000 kilometers of festooned network fiber optic system. So we are a little bit different towards Atlantic cables, for example. And we started up the business some 12 years ago and are investing approximately 1 billion euros during 7 years.
Only 1 billion. Only, right?
Yeah.
It's
only.
just, yeah. Fantastic. Good having you and welcome.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm José Vargas, and I came from Anacom. More interested here, not in the role of the regulator, but helping to develop the sector in Portugal. Thank you.
Fantastic, and good having you, José. And yes, Aki, again, you.
Aki Ulias, Senior Partner at Cambridge Management Consulting. And yeah, I'm happy to be another Nokia person here, although I'm the lifetime Nokia person because I was born in the city of Nokia. So
he actually has it written in his passport. Born, place, Nokia. So it is, and I saw it. So thank you to all the panelists. Thank you for and audience for being here. Now, Luca, if I may invite you to kick it off, please. And we would like to thank Nokia for sponsoring this session as well, Luca. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So I will try to stay in time and not get the wrong button. But first of all, I would invite you to appreciate the difference between the old Nokia. This is what you used to see in the 3310 mobile phone that I am sure each one of us had in his youth. For those of us who have gray hair, let's say, for millennials, I don't even think that you know what 3310 is. Go Google that somewhere. And the new logo, which means that here at Nokia, we are actually changing shape. So we are since a long time no longer the company of mobile phone, but the meaning of the new logo is we want to be the company of digital critical infrastructure. And clearly, subsea is at the heart of that. Now, let's try to see if I get the right button. You typically miss. No, it's the right one. So I will keep it in 2 points. Actually, the thesis I want to expose to you and then set off the discussion is that if we look at the subsea infrastructure sector, we do not have a technical challenge. The challenges we have are of a completely different kind, which I will introduce in the second part. Now, in any case, I think there's a good amount of engineers here in the audience, so we cannot avoid then going technology. Now, step number 1, the challenge. Capacity is going up. Sure it is. So let's approach it from the wet plant perspective. From the wet plant perspective, the path over the next 5 years, and we can extend that a little bit even to the next 10 years, is quite clear. And essentially, as an industry, we know how to deliver the goal of 1 petabit per cable system. So how do we do that? Basically, it's essentially the 3 technologies you see here. First of all, SDM. So being able to fit more fiber pairs into the very same, let's say, cable armor. Today, we are deploying 24 fiber pair per cable, and stay tuned, it's gonna go up. Now, this is not the right place to speculate exactly when and how many more fibers, but rest assured it's gonna go up again. So 24 is not the end game. Then what happens, because you know, okay, we increase, but there are so much. The next frontier is clearly identified and is multi-core fiber. So this is not for tomorrow. So here we are thinking of a time horizon of roughly 5 years. So we could see multi-core fiber in projects, subsea projects going live toward the end of the decade. But clearly, we see that a number of challenges that we have there, and let me just single out 2, basically. First, economics and the reliability of manufacturing the fiber core. So this is being addressed. And when we talk to fiber makers, so you know the guys like Corning, Sumitomo, and so on, we see that economics are starting to make sense. So I think industry there is on the right track. And at the same time, other challenges like amplification of multi-core fiber are being addressed as well. So we are quite sure that that's the next step when it comes to fiber pair. Of course, there will be an evolution step there. We will start with the 2-core fiber, then will be the 4-core fiber, and then you go to, let's say, coupled and uncoupled first and coupled modes. But let's say, with respect to a few years ago, the path here is much clearer. And last, this is already operational on some systems, not all of them. It's quite clear that if we want to increase the number of fiber, we need to drive more power into the fiber, and to do that cost effectively and with the right amount, aluminum conductors is the way to go. So we already have some systems deployed that use aluminum instead of copper. And that is also good for sustainability. Talking about the blue part, aluminum is lighter, cost less, and overall, when we look at the wet plant, the trend is set. So the cost per bit per fiber, we are in a position to keep it decreasing and also make it more sustainable. Because essentially the very same ship you send, let me introduce the theme of the ship, will be, it's clear that if you deploy 24 fiber, 1 core, you have a certain cost per fiber pair. If you increase that number and then you multiply by 2 cores, let's say, I think we're on the right path to keep the cost per bit decreasing. For you to happily give these discounts away to your end customers, but we talk about a little bit more later on. Now is not working. Yeah, then second step, SLT technology. SLT technology, in the last 3 months, we, Nokia, and our dear competitors here, there was a flurry of announcement on the next generation of chipset. So we're gonna have a lot of fun in the next several quarters on bids, RFPs, and so on. So who does more? I go farther than you. I squeeze a few gigabit more than you on the wet plant. So that's what we vendors love to do. So we are here to compete for your benefit. But let the two takeaways from the announcement that have been made. Point number one, it's clear that it's all about making a more efficient use of energy. So, I mean, we are all boasting of significant double-digit decrease into power per transported bit, which is good news because, again, we're on the very right track to keep the things blue. And so we can rest assured that data volume is going to go up, but we are not going to burn so many more tons of whatever type of fuel to get our megawatts in the data center running. And the second takeaway I would like to mention here, going to the next silicon geometry, is also quite clear that we are entering an era of diminishing returns. I mean, when we started at 28 nanometer chipset and then went to 16 and then 7 and now the next frontier, 5, 3, whatever. In the first steps, you see capacity in a system. Okay, here you can do 12 tera. Now it has become 18. Very interesting. And now it's 24. Fantastic. Now, yes, there are still some areas, especially on, let's say, short hops. And short in oceanic subsea means at least 1,000 kilometers. Okay, so yes, still some gains to be made on some wet plant, but for many, many more, so transatlantic, transpacific, and so on, we are clearly in a game of diminishing returns. So we are really, I mean, Shannon, we are really touching it with the next generation of chipset. Now, third point, back on wet plant, the next frontier. What we see at Nokia and ASN in terms of the technology evolution of the wet plant is essentially what we call CC nodes. Node means the undersea repeater. CC for climate change, but essentially it means turning the undersea amplifier, which up to 20 years ago was the thing that kept you awake at night because it was enough that one pump basically broke and you needed to send out the ship to repair because you got a full fiber out of service. Now, this is no longer the case. With the pump farming, undersea repeaters are absolutely reliable because you can get many pumps out of service and still the amplifier being able to feed all the fiber pairs that cross it. So in terms of reliability, there was such a huge gain that we can afford to add additional sensors. And what we are targeting is, well, the application we are targeting is essentially earthquake and tsunami warning. And I think it's quite appropriate that we talk about tsunami warning here in Lisbon. I want to be very clear. I hope that this technology, we do a job that people like Voltaire will have less and less material to elaborate on the disasters of mankind than they had in the past. So that's definitely, let's say, an application for that. But at the same time is the climate change effect. So we don't know today what is the temperature and how it changes at the bottom of the ocean. And these added to a lot of other things that we don't know about the bottom of the ocean. So we hope that deploying this, which of course comes, is not, let's say, as cheap as a classic repeater, but we believe that the information that we get out of here will be extremely valuable to address the challenges we have in front. Because let's face it, climate is going to change anyway. And it's not by restraining the use of our car that things will stop. So we better have more tools to learn where and how it is changing, especially in the oceans, to figure out what is the best way to cope. Now, this is the technology. But the main problem we have, I posit, in subsea industry is not technology. So let's have a quiz. Now, how many active oil tankers are in the world? Shoot a number. 1,000, wrong. Almost 9,000 growing. These are necessary, but not sustainable, clearly. Fossil fuels and the like. Cruise ships, guesses anyone? Oh, 20,000, maybe sailing ships. No, we are, from an environmental point of view, we are much better off. Just 302. Just. Each one of these is eating up 5,000 tons of fuel to get people around. So again, not sustainable, and I would argue even not so much necessary, but okay. Active nuclear submarines. Spot on at 130. These are very good for CO2, zero emissions, but are very bad for everything else. Cable ships. You need a price? I don't have to do. Can you give him a price? Exactly 60. Exactly 60, and here I'm counting both cable laying ships and maintenance ship. And I was kind of scared to hell when I heard in one of the patents that some people are not putting the cable maintenance into their business case. Oops. By the way, all the other three categories are growing in numbers, except cable ships. Cable ship, the only thing that is growing there is the average age. Okay, fine. So, this to say that the subsea industry challenge is definitely not technology. Now, this is a quote I took from Paul Abfalter of Telstra. I said, actually what screws up a subsea project is the three Ps: partners, permits, and politics. Let me do just one note about politics. Up to 2021, we were discussing a fantastic project to take fiber from Western Europe to Japan, crossing the Arctic Circle. That would have slashed the latency by a factor of 2 to take internet traffic from Japan to Western Europe. The only problem was that there was Russia. So this project is postponed indefinitely, to say the least. But these three P are not enough. I believe, and that's my add-on, there's the P number 4 that collectively, as an industry, we need to reflect on, which is perception. I mean, we are telling each other that digital is underpinning the world. Fantastic. Here we are telling ourselves that data center and subsea are underpinning digital. So how is it possible that we find trouble in getting projects approved? We find trouble to get enough revenue and money to fund the maintenance. And eventually we risk putting the core, let's say, pillars of the overall digital infrastructure at risk. My take, and then I will leave to the panel to comment, is that we have a problem of perception. I mean, I don't know you, but when I go out dining with friends and I say, what do you do? I do subsea. There are cables going under the sea? You serious? Yeah, because how do you think WhatsApp is working? Well, over the air. No, it doesn't work like this. So the problem is we all like what we do. We are aware of the value, but we are not so good at selling that value outside. So I think we need to do collectively a work on perception, and of course that it is essentially a political work that we need to do collectively to increase the awareness of what we are doing here. Because if we don't change our perception first and then somebody else's perception, there's no way, no bloody way that we will get, let's say, the outside world from consumers, content provider, and so on, to reward us the way I think we all deserve. Thank you very much.
Now you should take in that applause because it was really, really, really lively. Thank you for your presentation, Luca. Thank you. Any questions for Luca so far? Yeah, of course. We have in the front, we have two gentlemen who have a question. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello.
Smoking.
Hello.
Yeah.
I'm Eric. How are you?
I'm good. So
Editor note is my colleague. So if he asks the wrong question, he will get fired.
Just to make it easy on you, just to
yeah, thanks, Luca, for everything, and it's an awesome presentation. One of the things that you pointed out was the average thing that's growing is age, right? How do you or any one of us in vendors or SLT partners, right? How do we tackle the retention and making the word subsea SLT sexy as AI or 5G or whatever it is, right? That's my question. Thank you.
Difficult questions. Actually, this is one of the big problems we have because basically among, let's say, the problems of perception, the industry as a whole has a problem of attracting the right talent for the reason we discussed. So today, young engineers, they get out of school and they want to do AI stuff. If they feel not so much up to that, they might settle for 5G and things like that. Nobody's thinking about subsea. Now, I have to say that the suboptic foundation, of which we are a member, we are doing a hell of a lot of work, and not only in Europe, because the problem is global, to advertise our industry in universities and take people to this type of career. But I mean, here you're possibly an exception if you want, because you're quite young. You don't remember what a 310 was. Still, we managed to take you work in the subsea. So it's all about you know, taking the opportunity whenever you have to go speaking into schools, university, public events. Because, I mean, the more we talk about, the better.
And anyway, you're fired.
Yeah, I think it's actually ASN and Nokia are doing actually this kind of a programs already in France through the Suboptic. And then, of course, Google they launched a couple of years ago, they launched the Google Summer School for students. And again, we are all talking about Finland because the first two of them were actually held in Finland, and then it was last year, it was actually in Stockholm, also Sweden. So, but yeah, it is a very big issue. How do we get the talent? In Finera, you have very good procurement right now in at least in the US to attract the new talent. We were actually discussing that on another thing that I was moderating or panel that I was moderating last year. But yeah, we need work and we need to make it sexy somehow. Yes.
Hi, Colin Wallace here of Infinera. The sensors on the repeaters, I think is a good idea to try and get that, but you said it costs more. Now, my experience of submarine cables is it's a real challenge to get the funding over the line to get a cable system up and running and contracting force. If it costs more, do you see that being taken up because it will make it difficult? Or do you think there'll be other bodies, maybe environmental bodies, that will contribute to the costs to maybe pay for that?
A very good point, because yes, finding financing for subsea cables, unless one of the big hyperscalers arise and open the checkbook, has never been easy. The point is we need to leverage this new capability, and I'm sure that we will not be able to sell it in every future system. It's clear that if you want to sell this, you need to bring to the table and to the contributing party other bodies than the usual industry players. And the first thing, so thinking about research institutions. So, for example, you would need to engage in the US with the NOAA. okay? And you need to look for money elsewhere because it's a new capability. Potentially, it can open up new sources of financing, but it has to be done in a clever way because it can also open up, and maybe anticipating the question from the lawyer, a lot of regulatory issues. Just because now without but governments are strange bodies that they make you wait for a permit for 3 years, but then they are capable of asking the data free of charge. So come on, we need to find a give and take, let's say, trade-off. So
I would like to also to answer that question. Luca did not mention, but and I understand why, but it was the launch in Portugal, the first request for tender for a smart cable. That smart cable will interconnect Portuguese mainland to Azores and Madeira. That smart cable will have sensors on the repeaters, those sensors you mentioned. And it's for me, it's a perfect example of blue and green in terms of sustainability. We are not just talking about efficient energy, but we are going much more further.
Thanks for bringing. I couldn't bring that up in the first place, but definitely yes, Portugal is a good example where the stars align in the right place between government, institutional stakeholders, and the buyers.
What Luca did not mention is the suppliers are going to offer that at zero cost.
For free?
But forget it. Nevertheless, talking seriously, we are expecting to have additional cost of a telecom cable based on something between 10–15%. It's not so much. We are talking perhaps between 15 million euros to have the capability during 25 years to detect earthquakes and to have the possibility to have early warnings of tsunamis in Portugal and neighboring countries, to have early warnings for tsunamis and for earthquakes. Just an example, if we'll have an earthquake as we had in 1969, it was a big one in this area, in the deep sea, the epicenter. We'll have the possibility to have early warning for the population, not SMS, but cell broadcast or something like that, with 1 minute in advance. Everybody, every Portuguese will receive an announcement, please protect yourself, a big one is coming. Only first study on this, counting this, will be only with the people that will be saved, and the injuries that will be avoided will be paying that investment 3 or 4 times. If you count also in the impact of the early warnings for tsunamis, and Portugal has a lot of beaches, seaside, and so on, much more people will be saved, and the impact of this will be paying not only the investment on the smart observation part, but will be paying several times the telecom cable.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
It is a lifetime opportunity for Portugal because we'll have that domestic system now, and we'll have to wait perhaps another 25 years to have a third one. Mm-hmm. And it's a lifetime. We'll have to do it now, and we'll do it. In terms of legal, we don't have problems. It's a domestic system. It's using Portuguese EEZ and terrestrial waters. But even if it is an international system between 2 neighboring countries, there is no problem also. I don't see really a problem on that. But we'll have to be careful, and we'll have to pay attention on that. That's for sure.
Yes. Is it? Yes, now it's working.
So I see the real advantage of these repeaters being the environmental aspects rather than the tsunami, you know, because Google have been running a project. It's been well publicized. It's kind of been published on the internet. There's ways of doing tsunami and earthquake detection on existing cables without anything extra in the subsea repeaters, just by using the coherent technology on the end. And there's no cost for that. So from a tsunami early warning, you can do that.
No, sorry, I don't agree. There is a cost. You will have to pay you are mentioned the SOP, the state of
the SOP,
right? From Vale Camalov.
That's the one, yes.
Okay. There is a cost of the equipment. It's not first. What the smart cable are using wet sensors in every repeater, right? And the Google, that's we call the wet detection. Google and for instance the AS or the interferometry, they don't use sensors. They use all the fiber as a sensor. But for instance, the Google Met or Vale Camalov Met, they detect a vibration or an aggression between two repeaters. They cannot detect where. Okay, that's not bad. And if you have a triangulation using other systems, we'll be triangulating zones. And then you can have a more precise location of the epicenter and have conclusions on that. Nevertheless, you cannot compare the identification of the sensibility of that sensor as a wet sensor, as a accelerometer. It's completely different. It's more in terms of quality than in quantity. Nevertheless, it's very useful and we want to use it. And I would love to use that in AKN for sure. But we can, if the Atlantic CAM will be a smart cable, we can put SOP there and have conclusions. And we can use that system to calibrate the sensors because the sensors will downgrade over the year. And we want to use it also as well as the phase detection, as I can say like that, or DAS, if DAS the range will be different as we are trying to have.
Okay, maybe Teresa, you want to?
I was going to bring exactly this point that there's already a wealth of data available. I'm sure it doesn't compare to what we can get with the smart data, and but it's there, already available to be exercised. It's reasonably cheap. It's available in a series of cables that will not be instrumented. So it's a very good starting point. And so I think they complement each other. Let's say they don't replace each other.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other, because we already moving, let's say, or we bridged it already into the panel discussion, and I'm happy that the environment, which is a big topic, already popped in. So Aki, maybe for you, and to take it a bit broader, what are the best models and practices deployed by the organizations to make the networks and the organizations, I would not call it greener, but bluer, maybe in this case?
Well, I think the kind of methods were actually pretty much described in Lucas' presentation, which was actually quite comprehensive. So the pump farming, SDN, and so on, and the new possibilities of multi-core. Actually, there's another advanced technology which I really don't know how it's going to work in subsea. The hollow core fiber, which is then going to change completely everything. But yeah, I still haven't figured out how that would work in the subsea. So because if you have a hollow core and vacuum, what if the cable cuts and you need to do a repair? So that's not maybe viable. So
hollow core, for what we can look at, we don't see that happening. because if you get a cable cut, you risk getting water up to 10 kilometers into the fiber, which means that your repair, because you have to pick the cable from the ocean floor and then have the ship do the triangulation. It won't add just a few kilometers of extra cable to the repair section. It will add several tens of kilometers to the extra section, even when you lift it, of course. So, because at that point in time, you would have to lift the cable up to the point where water has eventually been stopped. And of course, nobody has made a measurement, a test, but we're talking about today, you know, being the cable full, water simply cannot enter the cable because you get the polyethylene and all the stuff. If you have a hollow fiber, nobody really knows, but we expect that to enter for several kilometers into the cable that you have to then cut, and the repair would likely become a nightmare. So and by the way, that would not really answer the capacity question.
Yeah,
it would bring benefit in latency. That's true.
And that's the biggest benefit. So
yeah, still we don't see that taking off at least say for till the end of the decade. So I think we need to see first the first samples of hollow core fiber, do testing, see how that would react. So, and then rethink, but for the time being, we don't see that happening.
Yeah, on this topic, we are working with non-amplified systems, so we don't have the problems with equipment under water. But we tend to try now to look at the carbon footprint during installation of the cable, and also the carbon footprint during the use of the cable systems, as we will have approximately some 70 ILA sites where we amplify the signal on land, not in the water. And we are handling how to get rid of heat caused by the equipment, as the equipment used on land-based ILA sites are not at all as energy efficient as the equipment you put on the seabed. And when it's about deployment of the cable, we are part of a consortium ordering a new cable ship that will be able to run on electricity for at least, let's say, 1.5 days. And we also will demand that the ship will follow the latest class rules on underwater sound pollution. And underwater sound pollution maybe not is a problem in the Atlantic Ocean or in the Pacific, but in the Baltic Sea, where we deploy cables, it definitely is. And there are small mammals living also in the Baltic Sea. And the authorities and regulators are really now really into this. And we think that without trying to solve the issues with underwater pollution, we won't get the permits, not even for the survey that we need to do, and much less for deploying the cable. So there are a lot of things that can be done. And we also think that, talking about the sexiness of the industry, we think that building new, more modern cable ships and try to change the ways of how cables are repaired. Because we think honestly that the methodology is where, like, 150 years old, you have an anchor and drag it until you find the cable, and we really want to do something else. And and we need to do all these things, because otherwise we will not be able to recruit people, and we don't think we will be able to get the permits, at least where there are other mammals living on the seabed. And the hyperscalers are, as soon as you mention something of like those small things to them, they get immediately very big to them. So they'd like to stay and do whatever best we can do to save the environment and also persons working with the things. Just one small thing is that we are now taking water toilets into our ILA sites. You know, there used to be toilets some like 30 years ago in Sweden on Telia's sites where they landed cables. But then now it's just a small box by the beach with nothing. And everyone knows that the guys from Infinera and Nokia say that you don't need to spend any time on the ILA sites. But in practicality, when the speed goes up on the cable, our customers at least spend more and more and more time on the sites. So we have a program for that as well.
Teresa, you want to bump in here?
Yes. I think each one of us in this whole sustainability discussion, we all have a role to play. So you work on the wetland sustainability, and that's great. And we work on the improvements in power consumption on our transponders. Luca mentioned from generation to generation, we've seen very large improvements, reductions in power consumptions by factor 10 or 20. And we see it coming for the next for the following generations as well, continuing. So in that sense, I'm with Luca. It's not the I am a big believer in technology and in innovation. So I think it will keep coming. Maybe we would want it to come at a bigger rate, but the adoption of technology also takes time. So I don't think it's a lack of development and technology and capability to improve our environmental impact. I wanted to tie this in with a discussion yesterday, where we talked about the end user's perception and awareness of their patterns of consuming, in this case, data, and how that impacts the environmental issues and the sustainability. I think it comes more to that, because I think each of us from the technological point of view in the ecosystem is doing our own role. We have a lot of pressure from our customers to do better. It saves them money, and it gives them better ESG ratings. So we need to improve. We will improve. I don't know how aware the world is somehow of their ability to also impact the power consumption and environmental impact. And I think that's the big challenge, is educate the population. And
absolutely, and again, you mentioned it, and as you mentioned a lot. I mean, yesterday we mentioned it, and it was in Luca's presentation from almost 100-year picture old, which in there was perception, you know, but education as well. If Luca would have let this hit one slide, how many vessels do we have? How many? If you put this at the EU, they will talk the next day completely different about how we and the vendors, but also the operators are treating, you know, the subsea cables and so on, you know, and what the latest innovations are and the technological developments. So it is exactly that. It is the perception, but that starts with us. We cannot pinpoint to other people. We need to educate them. We need to tell them, listen, guys, it is like this. Yes, you're right. Yes, you have your perception. We respect this, but this is also true. And where can we find now the balance to get this done? But we need to start with the education. We need to tell them. We need to show them. Otherwise, nothing will happen, because the majority, they don't even know. They don't have the knowledge. They have no clue. They have no clue. And that is the thing. So it's our job to tell them and to educate, or to hopefully to change a little bit the perception, right? Okay. Any questions from the audience? Or Aki Lala wants to jump in. She's coming with the microphone, Lala.
Hello, thank you. It's not really a question. I just wanted to make like a suggestion. You talk about perception and the lack of talent, and you were talking about sexy. Just I want to give you some consideration. There's a large pool of talent that is called women that are very absent of this kind of forum. And I've been also working for many years in how to take more girls to STEMs. And it's really a challenge. But one challenge that you can help address is the way we pitch technology in the market. It's very much addressed to a very boys mentality, which is sexy, you know, technology, it's fancy. And in general, women, well, it's girls tend to see what is the service. And I think it's also part of the pitch is how, in this case, submarine technology or technology in general is serving the progress of humanity, how they could help that technology be more sustainable. So these kind of things, instead of just thinking sexy, you know, can also help to attract a lot of women talent, because there's a lot of women that are interested in STEMs, but they at the end go to healthcare, because it's where really they believe that they will have an impact. So if they understand the impact that we are providing to the world and we pitch in that way, it's going to be easier to attract women to the business.
No, absolutely, and true that, Lala, and thank you for your comment. And that's why you see that more and more the universities, you know, already when people are at the Liceo and before they choose a study, that you see more and more universities promoting this as for everybody, you know, and to make it, I would call it more funky, because that makes it nicer. And because we need everybody, guys, we need everybody. Louis?
Yeah, indeed, I attended the Suboptics in London last year. And also there's another event that was called the Young Talents event in London. From the message that I took over, when we opened the CLS in Barcelona last year, and we've only been open since September 2022, now we regularly invite schools to visit the CLS, just to bring over the message of what the CLS does, what the impact that we have on the local community, and so on and so on. And we do this on a regular basis now in Barcelona.
No, cool. Teresa?
Thank you. I wanted to thank Lala because, I mean, it's also a subject obviously very close to my heart. It is a rather complex subject. I think addressing it at university age is too old. We need to start much younger than that. I think girls need to think of techie things since they're toddlers almost, like something appealing. I agree that the language that we sometimes choose to characterize technology might not be the most appealing one. So it's a question of attracting girls, women, of attracting young talent. But I have a kind of a different proposal here. So we're all seeing the optical experts aging. We're facing issues with capturing new talent. We hear from operators that many of their employees will retire in the next coming years, and they are struggling to see how they will keep operating their networks. So there's a role to automation here.
No, first of all, but I think we have to work longer looking at our pension schemes nowadays, right? Yes. I think we need, unfortunately, we want to stop? No, another 5 years on top of it. No, but you have a valid point.
You know, my background is in network software and automation. And for many years, we tried to find business cases, put together nice business cases for automation. It was very hard. How much are you going to save in operations? How much more return of invest you have on the equipment with more efficient use? Very, very hard. Now automation will become mandatory because of the lack of talent in our industry. So sad, and oh well.
Good. Ready?
Yeah, and I think also one problem, at least in our region, is that the incumbents, they used to have, like in Sweden, Telia had some at least 100 persons working professionally with sea cables. And now I think they have absolutely 0 persons doing that. And I think if we would like to stay on as a part of the business, we should identify the differences and try to get the companies to become a little bigger. I usually compare our company. We are trying to build a network of sea cables to be able to connect redundantly between major cities. compared to like one-hit wonders that builds just one sea cable between A and B. They educate themselves, but then everything falls into sleep. And I think it's very important that there are cable operators that own a lot of cables, and that the traditional operators may have to focus on some part of land networks or mobile, as I think that otherwise we won't be able to stay as a part of the business or as companies being able to attract young talents to work with sea cables, because sea cables are a little bit different. You know, it takes a lot of time to get a permit, and then it's just one day and then you're all operated it. Compared to land cable, that will take you nothing to get the permits, but years to dig, and an angry farmer. So I think that for us, at least, we are trying to build up some sort of business around sea cables. And I think there are many opportunities all over the world to do that, as redundancies are much important for the future.
Yeah, actually, last week I had a discussion with one of our partners. He has been working in the subsea business for, I think, 25 years. He was actually asked that, the statement was that there is no women in the subsea. There is actually quite a lot of women in the subsea business. We have very experienced, one of the most experienced people in the subsea business are actually women. Then, of course, in the whole tech industry, you have Women in Tech group, which is doing amazing job of attracting more girls or women into the business. But yeah, another point with the talent is that exactly what Frederick said, and I think it's maybe not a nice task, but I'm kind of looking to the vendors, to ASN, Subcoms, Infineras, and so on, because it's basically like what Frederick said. It's the only way of getting into touch on multiple different projects, because if you are in this one hit wonder, it actually, you learn the things, maybe, hopefully, but then you can't use them anymore. So I think the vendors are playing an extremely key role as a kind of the foundation of getting new talent into the picture.
No, absolutely, I agree. And I also totally agree that in technology in general, one of the challenges adding talent is make sure that we bring in more women, because definitely, I mean, engineering business, from the engineering school till a lot of your professional life, you see that luckily it is increasing. So to give an example, we at Nokia have precise targets. So we have management measured on that to make sure that for new roles and new position, we have targets to get a women presence of 25, 30%, and every year it grows. It is true that we need to start even earlier. You need to start in high school, because by the time of university it's too late. The mind is made up and it's quite difficult.
Yeah, but what they can do is to try, when they do a commercial on the television, on a technical whatever box which it is, not to put only a boy there, but put everybody there who wants to be in there. You see?
No, I agree. So, but yes, I agree with you, Aki. Is we as vendors of SLTs or wet plants, we have the primary role of, let's say, inducting the people in the industry, because it's very difficult that somebody starts a career in a telco from subsea. I mean, if the guy starts in subsea in a telco, I think very soon, if he wants to go up the ladder, he would find another department and location, just because you need to sell SIMs, 5G, and wholesale, and it's fine because it's a different business model, clearly. So yes, it's on us to induct, let's say, new graduates into this sector. I also would very much like to thank Luis for the kind of initiative that he's doing, taking people to the beautiful Barcelona CLS is really, and by the way, it's changing the place, because it was placed in this kind of a rundown neighborhood, and then you get shops popping up again. It's getting, you know, kind of not yet Movida Ramblas, but improving, sure. So
Did you make it an outlet center or what?
No, I mean, it's all about reaching out based on our position in the market. So definitely up to us vendors to take, let's say, the new guys in, then they will make up their mind, stay in subsea, go to a service provider, whatever. And definitely we need you, data center provider and so on, to spread, let's say, this awareness. I would say you work more on the high school side, because there we cannot reach. You can reach. So is it?
Can I?
Please.
I agree. We have to begin earlier, and it won't be in the high school, but the YC, something else.
That was my
I
head, by the way.
I can share some experience we did in that sense. We organized 8 years ago an exhibition about submarine cables, a full history from the submarine cables, telegraph, coaxial, optical, and so on. We had there a lot of movies explaining a lot of stuff, very, very, very interesting. And that exhibition was temporary, but stay for 2 or 3 years. They are still something, but 1/3 of that, and this still being visited by schools, young people. Of course, the suppliers contribute with giving a lot of stuff. For instance, ASN put there one branching unit and a repeater. We had a lot of, we had in the room, we pretend to have the ambience of a cable station. It was very funny and very interesting from my point of view, and is still being visited. I have a suggestion. Since ASN is, I believe, is the foundation of suboptic, is ASN, they are Paul Gabla and so on. They are very much involved. Suboptic, next Suboptic will be in Lisbon, 2025. Perhaps you could work together something to have some kind of exhibition in the hall. I don't know where you want to do it, but to have that exhibition visited by the public and try to solve and contribute for this perception.
And show the old 3110s or 5110s or the, you know?
Yes. Just make sure you don't put the dates of on the same day. Yes.
Exactly. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to do a quick closing round, and Teresa, if I may start with you, scoping a little bit the future, but maybe you can twist it also a little bit around, you know, the importance of you know, the secured and smart cable network management. Maybe you can combine it a little bit. I know it's difficult, but or just tell us or the audience, what can we expect? I mean, we discussed sustainability. We talked about it needs to be a bit more green blue, education, different approaches that's needed. Especially on the repeaters and on the new devices that we have and the advantages. But what else can we expect? What's out there? And what can we expect from you, from Infinera?
Well, that's it's a big question.
Those are 27 questions. Yes.
It's a very big question. So we in Infinera will and our competitors for sure will continue delivering the best coherent engines, continue delivering more capacity to fill the networks. We didn't touch that in that sense, but one way of also being sustainable or more sustainable, more environmental friendly is to make sure we waste absolutely no capacity in each deployed cables. So that is for sure one thing that we will offer the means for operators to continue doing for submarine cables to be filled up to their limit. As I kind of pivoted before, I think there's a lot of power in automation that hasn't been fully explored in the submarine domain. There are very interesting automation tools that are used specifically for subsea with power balancing and inserting noise when there are channels failing, etc. But how about combining that type of automation with the terrestrial network management now that the submarine channels are being expressed inland, going into potentially meshed networks, and you blur the lines and you have an end-to-end path that you want to automate, that you want to manage end-to-end. So that but I still, because I fear this will be my last chance to speak, I wanted to leave something here, which is we have such a beautiful and powerful work in some sense. I mean, connectivity, even from the point of view that Lala was bringing of the humanitarian aspects of it, the potential for doing good for society, and with that attracting people who are who feel this call. How can we not do better? We have everything it takes in some sense. So
I do agree, and that is a really nice statement from you, Seth. Thank you so much. Rednick.
I think I continue on what Teresa said, that I think best practice is, at least from our side, what it's all about, trying to do as good as we can, and also understand that the good thing with having hyperscalers as customers is that they like the word best practice. If they can choose between bad or good, at least as we experience them, they choose good, as they don't want to be a bad company in front of their end customers. And for us, at least, we are just trying to be developing the methods of best practice, because all the technology is already there. But then you cannot use 27-year-old cable ships or the methods that you use. We need to move on to the next phase of everything. When we build new cables, it's easy. Just not upgrading, building new.
Thank you. Roger?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
What is your takeaway for the audience? What's there to expect? What do you think which is still out there, or where should we go to? What do you foresee?
I believe we will have to be prepared somehow to begin also to rationalize the utilization of the seafloor. Not only telecom submarine cables, we'll have energy cables, ducts, all kinds, and we'll have to be prepared for that also. Also, I see in the future more and more hybridization of the submarine cables. Now we are talking about smart cables, and by the way, it's not smart clever, it's scientific monitoring and reliable telecommunications. And that is very important because the sensors won't jeopardize never the telecom part. But I see in the future the seafloor being used much more by telecom submarine cables, but also by energy cables. Now in Portugal, we are talking about to have a room reserved for wind farms, for submarine cables, for other things, and we'll have to rationalize this. We have a very long coast, of course, but we'll have. And in the future, we'll have full hybrid cables, energy, telecom, sensors, everything that I don't know where, when, but that for sure will occur.
And to see the beauty of the sea, I would recommend everybody who didn't see it, please watch an old movie of 1995, which is called Le Grand Bleu, the Big Blue. If you look at that movie, show that at every kindergarten, you know, combined with some technique, whatever it is, and trust me, in the next coming 20 to 50 years, we are full with women and men in the subsea cable. So no shortage on this one. Aki, your final statement, takeaway.
Yeah, it's actually going back to something what I wanted to say earlier is what Luca also mentioned is the vessels here. There's not so many cable vessels Survey vessels, we have actually much more because they are kind of a multi-purpose. They survey the seabed for other users, seabed users as well. But the vessels, I think there we can have the biggest improvement in the whole picture, as long as there is money available. It is the most expensive. The marine operations is the most expensive portion of a subsea cable system, and also quite challenging. But now you have started to see, especially on the survey side, you're starting to have the operators are not anymore in the vessel. You have a very minimal crew, which would make it more economical as well. And it's been on the survey equipment are operated remotely. And I think then the vessels could be operated remotely as well, but then the legislation doesn't really allow that, and which I think is still a good idea. I do have an autopilot in my car, but yeah, somebody needs to be there to make sure nothing happens. So that's the kind of development I really want to see.
Okay, and what I would say, get the diesels out and put biofuel in there. So that helps a lot. Luca, closing statement.
Closing statement. We talked about challenges. I think we broadly agree that challenges are not technical, at least for the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, despite the challenges, I think I would come away from this venue with great hope, because at the end of the day, and I'm elaborating on what Teresa said about the data cycle consumption, at the end of the day, we are the only industry between data center, infrastructure, telco, internet exchange, and subsea that has really the whole picture and what it means in terms of energy impact, sustainability, and so on, to make basically the world go round. And at the end of the day, if you look at the things, I mean, there's a lot of talk of sustainability, and clear. I read that as we don't have to waste. But at the same time, I think we also need to be clear to ourselves. Mankind moved forward by figuring out how to do things that in the first place were unsustainable. And I think we have all the tools to frame the challenges, and eventually somewhere from this industry, somehow we'll find the answer.
But we were clever, because the first car was not a fuel car, but was an electrical car, right? So I think the things are there. We just need to look around and make the right decisions. And with that, I would like to thank the audience, first of all, for staying with us for 5 sessions. I would thank you so much for being with us here in the beautiful Qashqais at the Care Community GCCM in here. I want to thank Nokia with the new logo and congratulate you on this one. And the old phone, which was not a smart, but hey, the 9110 was already becoming really smart back then. So I still have that one at home. So I would like to thank my panelists. Teresa, thank you so much for your contribution and for your insights. Frederick, as always, thank you so much. Jose, top, thank you for joining us. Aki, for your tremendous, enormous, and multiple panel sessions contributions. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And Luca, as always, thank you very much for a very clear picture. And I hope you got something out of it. And